It's Dan Kenner with another episode of The Casual Author. Today is Wednesday, May 10th, 2023, as I record this. And this is episode number 76 of the podcast. Today we're talking with Bracha Goetz about becoming a prolific children's book author. It's a really great conversation, particularly for those of you who've been interested in writing and publishing children's books. Bracha has been mostly traditionally published, so she has a lot of insights from that perspective, from the querying perspective, and finding your niche in that space in children's books. So I think you'll really enjoy the conversation. You'll want to stick around for that. We also talk about the writing process, of course, just a little bit. So in update news, I feel like so much has happened in the past week, and I don't take great notes for myself. So in the past week, we have had another goat have her baby. This goat named Rivlin has had goats before. She had 2 babies last year. We were kind of hoping that she would have more than 1 baby. Unfortunately, she just had 1. Fortunately, it's a very beautiful baby goat. The interesting thing about this baby goat is that her mom, Rivlin, is black, almost entirely black, and the dad is kind of multicolored. He's mostly brown with some blacks. He's got like little specks of white. This baby goat is almost completely white. She's beautiful, and she's got little bits of gray and brown. If you want to see pictures, I'll be sending it out in my email list this week. But yeah, definitely keep an eye on that. We're very excited to have that new baby girl. We're probably going to be keeping her, although we'll decide when the other goats have their babies which ones we're planning on keeping. We also just finished the chicken tractor. So those of you who don't know, a chicken tractor is essentially just like a portable chicken house that you call it a tractor because it's movable. And the point of it is take it out to pasture, and you can either fence them in with electric fencing and then put it out in your field and then just open and close it at night. We plan on just kind of leaving them in there. It's a pretty big area for them, and they can just eat at the ground. It's open ground. There's not a floor to the house. And so they'll just peck and eat at the ground, and every day I'll pick it up and move it a little bit with them inside. This one's going to be on wheels. It has a peaked roof to protect from the rain. It's a beautiful structure. We've done something different this year. We had flat structures historically, and they do okay. They don't last as long as we hoped, and they're not on wheels, so it makes them a little bit tricky to move. This new one should make it so much easier. And looking forward to using that this year. We'll be moving the chickens out here soon. It's getting warm enough that we can move them out in this portable house. And then I'll clean out their coop, and they'll spend the duration of the warmer months probably out, just preparing our land for gardens. So you put them over your garden area or where we're planning on planting trees. Their manure definitely fertilizes it. They scratch it up. They eat all the weeds. They kind of prevent a lot of those weeds from coming back. They do a pretty good job of clearing it. So they serve a purpose, and we're excited to get them out there. Now, we are less than 2 weeks out from the chickens hatching. I talked a little bit about putting them in the incubator last week, and it takes 3 weeks. So just kind of waiting on. It looked like 6 of the 22 did not fertilize for whatever reason. It's possible that the roosters just weren't interested in those chickens or whatnot. I don't know the story there, but they weren't fertilized. So we pulled those out, and then the other 16 that are still in the machine should hatch. At least we hope so. So essentially, the way is you put the egg over like a candle. There's a little light. It's pretty bright. You shine it up through the egg, and you can see various things inside the egg, like a little speck or some veins or things that indicate that there's a chick growing inside. And 6 of the eggs had nothing. So, yeah, we just took those out because obviously if we leave them in there and there's no chicken inside, they'll just kind of rot and get disgusting. So we pulled those out, and now we're just waiting for the 14 days or a little bit less than 14 days to finish so that they can hatch and we have more chicks. So that's kind of fun. We'll be prepping for that here in the next week or so. So my paternity leave is wrapping up. I'll be headed back to work soon. That's not going to mean anything for the podcast, but it is going to mean something for the homestead updates as well as my authoring. I have been fortunate to spend some time doing more authory type things, which I've very much appreciated. But going back to the grind, I'm going to have to shift my schedule. I keep writing every day. That's not a problem. But it will be as much as I'm used to, because here I'm getting about an hour to an hour and a half of time. I don't get that much during the workday, or because of the workday. I mean, afterwards, the schedule gets a little bit crazy, but I'll still keep writing, and that's all that matters. So Dragon Blooded is so close to the end. I'm at about 82,000 words of 90,000. I do think I'm going to extend a little bit beyond that, but not too terrible. Not like ascended where the target was 145 and I hit 189. It's not going to be like that. I do feel like the story is so close to wrapping up and I'm doing pretty well about tying things together for the wrap up. What happens after that? Good question. I'm not quite sure. My guess is I'll probably jump to the next book, which I'm going to be calling Demon Blooded. And interestingly, it will be from a different perspective from Dragon Blooded. That is on purpose. I intend on each book of the 6-book series being done from a different perspective. They're all kind of together. All of these teenagers are together for the most part. I mean, the story follows all of their lines together. So I just thought it would be fun to write a 6-book series with a book from a different perspective of each of the teens. So I think it'll be fun. Looking forward to that. And then I'll probably jump back and do edits of Dragon Blooded after either I finish Demon Blooded, the 2nd book, or maybe I'm halfway through. I haven't quite decided what to do with that yet, but excited for the wrap-up energy of Dragon Blooded. And then, of course, I'll need beta reader. So if you're interested in beta reading that, it is a YA fantasy book. It's a series starter, and it will be a 6-book series. So definitely shoot me an email, author D. Kenner, if you're interested in being a beta, or of course, contact me on any social media platform. Author Dan Kenner is my handle. You'll be able to find me pretty easily, at least I would hope. Other than that, the 2nd book in the Kids of Cyber City is coming along very well. I think we're probably just past a third done with the 2nd book, maybe nearing half, if I think about the word count and the size of book 1. So it's coming along very well. I do think we'll be able to hit the targets. The target for finishing the 2nd book, I believe, is somewhere June-ish. And I think we're way ahead of time. And then the 3rd book, we're hoping to finish about July, August timeline. And I'm pretty confident that we're going to hit both of those. So my co-author and I are loving that. We're enjoying it. The 1st book is in beta right now. So if you're interested in reading the beta, it is a middle grade sci-fi trilogy. And my 9-year-old is absolutely loving it right now, which is fun. Other than that, I don't believe there are any other updates. So we'll go ahead and shift over to the interview portion of the podcast. Hey, Bracha, how are you?
Oh, wonderful. Happy to be here.
I'm so excited to have you here. You are a very prolific children's book author. I mean, how many books have you published now? It's more than 40 or somewhere around there?
Yeah, 41 children's books and just one memoir for adults.
So how long have you been writing? What got you into writing?
You know, when I got married, I had 2 little children. I was sitting outside while they were playing, and I brought my notebook because I don't have time to write when they're running all around me. They were outside, they were busy. And so I started writing an idea that I had. I wrote it on loose leaf paper. I put it in an envelope and mailed it to America. And like 6 weeks later, I got back an acceptance letter. I was like, wow, this is how you write a children's book. I just did it. I couldn't believe it. It was like no computer back in those days. I was just sending it in an envelope. So now things are really different, but that's how it got started. That's when I began to write. I mean, really, I was writing since 3rd grade, and I was writing a lot of rhymes. Like, I remember they read my poem to like the parent teacher conference because my poem was about how amazing books are and how books can take you any place in time or place, anything. You can travel with a book. So I think that was kind of, foreshadowing of where I was headed. I didn't know then, but I loved children's books so much. They're still my favorite kind of books. And so that's what I love to write.
It's funny. I love to read children's. I have 6 kids, so I'm constantly reading children's books. It's just our shelves are full of them, and I enjoy them. I cannot even imagine writing one. For some reason, my mind just can't wrap around the proper conclusion of a story in a short amount of words. I write novels, so I published 5 books, and they are not short. I'm kind of known for writing longer books. And so to summarize and complete an amazing story in such a short amount of words is baffling to me. I'm not sure I could figure out how to do that.
It's so interesting to me because I can't wrap my mind around what you do.
Uh-huh.
I can only write short things. even my memoir, I didn't really write it. I took excerpts from my diaries and journals and letters. I just filled in the missing pieces, and that was my memoir. I put it together like that because I don't write long things and I can't even imagine doing it. To me, everything has to be said as simply as possible, like like in as few words as you can get a message across. That's what I want to do.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
and there's something, and that's exactly the mindset to have with children's books, and it's why it seems like you're very good at what you do. I mean, having written over 40 books, I can imagine that you have a process and that works for you, and you know how to collect those thoughts and put it into the right, I guess, formula or pattern for children's books. So for your children's books, do you have like a specific age range that you're targeting, or is it just kind of like kids of all ages?
Yes, and I got to tell you before I forget, you're the only person that's ever interviewed me that has six children like I do.
Oh.
Oh, it's amazing. I
We
can't get over that. We really have this. It's the only time this
Yep,
commonality has ever happened. But
that's awesome.
yes. So talking about six, I'm telling you, I identify as a 6-year-old boy. That's it. So that's that.
I love it.
That I get into this headspace of a 6-year-old boy. I always did. Even as a child, I remember in plays, that's the role I had. I was a little boy in the
Hmm.
shows, you know? And in these books, that's who I am. I'm the boy, and the boy is empowered in some of my books, which are purely message books, the boy is empowered to teach the audience about, well, how to stay healthy, or how to swim safely, or how to prevent abuse. The child has learned these things and is now sharing it with other children. So that's, for some reason, that's the age in my head who I'm writing to. And those are my picture books, but I do have a series of board books for even younger children, ages 0 to 3, because like parents read these books to their children when they're just a few months old. They're
Hmm.
they're books that even little children can relate to because the pictures are and toddlers, so they can relate to them. So I have the board books, but most of my books are picture books for, I'd say the age range is like 3 to 8. That's it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny that you say that because I think there's a lot of people out there, maybe with or without kids, that think, oh, children's book, they're all the same. But they are, there are some different levels of children's book. I mean, I'll tell you, when I'm reading to my 2-year-old and she brings a book to me from the library and each page has about, a thick paragraph, I'm like, yeah, I'm summarizing. Like,
Right. Oh,
I'm
look at
gonna
this picture. Oh,
exactly
look at
like
that.
summarize that. So it's fine if that's something that maybe you're listening, you've never heard that before, but yeah, you got to make sure that within the children's book realm that you're targeting the right group. If you're hoping to reach 0 to 3-year-olds and there's lots of words, you're not reaching them. The
I
parents are
know.
not going to want to read that book.
Exactly. People say to me, "Oh, you've written so many books," but I tell them, "Well, some of my books are less than 100 words.
Yeah.
It's like they're very, very short,
Hmm.
and I love it that way. It For those beginning books. It's helping the children to see the world in a wondrous way, even little children. And then I continue that for older children. It's all about developing a sense of gratitude
Hmm.
and teaching children happiness skills as early as in life as possible,
Yeah.
so they don't have to play catch up later on in life. That's my goal.
That's a really interesting point. I think there's a lot of adults out there that maybe didn't have that opportunity, and so dealing with the repercussions of that later is not great. But I mean, there's we homeschool as well. I don't know if I mentioned that. We love homeschooling. We always have.
Wow.
Um, But the thing with kids is they're like sponges, right? They're going to soak up everything. And so it's exactly the type of books you need to pay attention to. Now, at the risk of being offensive, I don't want to be offensive, but I think I like that you mentioned that it should teach something, right? I mean, children's books should have a purpose. And I will admit that I have read some children's books that a term that I've heard used before is twaddle. Is just kind of that didn't do anything, right? Like it was kind of fun. It was a little fritzy story, but it didn't. There was nothing to it. Those aren't the types of books that I think parents want to read to their kids. So the books that you've written are very focused on lessons learned, which I love. I appreciate that, and they're very important. Like, let's learn how to swim. That's a very practical thing that you wouldn't think let's go to a kid's book for, but why not? I mean, if there's a kid's book for it, use your resources. So where did you get your ideas for these books? What led you to these topics and stories?
Right. Like, I graduated from Harvard University.
Oh,
I
wow.
was I was pre-med. I was in medical school. So my background is very much in public health.
Okay.
And even as an undergraduate at Harvard, I was taking courses at the Graduate School of Public Health. So I love to spread public health messages to young children. And what do all my books have in common? I feel that all my books help children's souls to shine.
Mm-hmm.
And without a healthy body, your soul can't fully shine. So keeping children healthy is something that's really important to me. In addition to teaching spiritual concepts in my books, that's why I also teach about how to live a healthy life really early on, because I find that children love clear guidelines,
Mm-hmm.
especially when they're presented in a joyful way. So it's a really funny thing. The books, I think my most popular books are the books about the prevention of abuse. I would have never
Mm-hmm.
expected that. But children come up to me all the time and they tell me, I love these books, which is not what I expected at all. I wrote them because I was on a mission to help children
Mm-hmm.
learn this information. But they're in at least 150,000 homes already. I
Wow.
mean, the children love this, and the pictures are delightful, and they're learning the basic guidelines no one's ever made clear to them in this kind of a way before. So the message really gets in. Like, and let's swim safely. That's a board book. I
Mm-hmm.
made it because, again, this I really wrote for toddlers.
Yeah.
So toddler books are on board books, so they can't rip the pages.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and the children, they've memorized the guidelines.
Oh,
I
wow.
I I meet up with 4-year-olds and 3-year-olds that can tell me what's in the book. It's like
That's awesome.
amazing. Yes, and they get it because the rate of drowning for toddlers is way too high. This is the most
Mm-hmm.
dangerous age around water. So the book teaches also, as you know, when you write a book for children, it's the only kind of book that you can reach every single age level
Mm-hmm.
because the grandparents are reading it, the parents are reading it, teachers are reading it. Teens pick up the book when no one's looking if it's laying around.
It's true.
And then the children are reading it. So everybody gets the message. And the parents, there's special notes for the parents in the back of the book. Never be more than a hand distance away from a toddler in the water.
Mm-hmm.
It's so dangerous. And also, drowning is silent. This is something people do not
Mm-hmm.
realize, that you expect help, help. No, when a child is underwater, there is no sound whatsoever. These are such important messages to get out to everybody. So I love being able to use my background in public health to really help souls to shine in every way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I love that, and I love that. I think there's a lot to be said about your interest and your pride in delivering this important messages to these kids. And I think there's a lot of messages out there like this one. So if you're someone who's been interested in writing a book, maybe you've been wanting to write a children's book, think about your past, think about your experience, think about things you're passionate. I mean, you're very clearly passionate about public health. and you've been able to infuse that into your passion for writing, which
Yes,
that should be the case. You should take multiple passions and mesh them and make them work together. It's a perfect thing to do. I think it's amazing.
exactly.
Um, so I'm gonna have to get some of your books, definitely, for my kids. We love books like this.
And another book that I have is about teaching children about disabilities, children that may not be as neurodiverse as other children. They never learn guidelines.
Mm,
Like they love this. How do you interact with a child who's blind or deaf or with invisible disabilities that
mhm.
you do not see their disability, but how can you include them? They're usually the loneliest children. They don't get
Yeah.
invited to parties and they don't get invited to play dates because of their disability. And I also, it teaches how to be, much more understanding of all these neurodiverse, all the neurodiversity. Like when a child sees another child with a physical disability, they normally stare, which is totally understandable because they're curious. The book teaches that, and I heard this on a workshop that I loved. There's another word that begins with S, also like stare, also 5 letters. If you add your smile while you're staring, it changes everything. So
Hmm.
that these are just important guidelines that I put in the books. Let's appreciate everyone to help children feel more confident interacting once they know these guidelines.
I think those are the types of things and the way it should be talked about with kids as well. I think there's a lot of people that underestimate the intelligence of children when it comes to topics like this. They're like, oh, they're too young for X, or they're not ready for X. It's like, actually, you'd be surprised.
Yes,
They're ready for some of these conversations, and starting them young is actually beneficial, particularly if you're going to be repetitive with the books. They're going to be reading them over and over again, especially if they're fun stories, right?
exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
so they will be learning the messages, which, definitely consider that. So I'm curious from the process perspective. I mean, you definitely have a really all of the ideas that you've only shared a few of them. I imagine that we could go through all 40 of your books and I would be wildly impressed with each one. But from the process, what does the writing process look like for you when writing a kid's book? Is this just like you schedule a big block of time for an hour, 2 hours, 5 hours, and just knock out the written word part of it, or do you take your time fitting the story together? I'm just curious, what does that look like for
Yes.
you?
Like one example, during the pandemic, let's see, a mother reached out to me one day. Help, my children are just eating junk. They're not
Mm,
exercising. They're not going to sleep.
mm,
Like everything is going. So please, can you write a book about this? I'm like, well, that's a fantastic idea. I don't exactly know how to do it, but that's a great idea. So I go to sleep. 3 nights later, I wake up. There's a pad next to my bed, with a pen. 3 nights later, I wake up. Oh my gosh, I have the title. I have exactly how to do this book. It was germinating. And then really, really, I ask God for help. Please give me the ideas of how to write this.
mhm.
And there it is. I have Let's Stay Healthy. I know how to write the book. And I called her back. I go, I can do it now.
That's awesome.
It's like it's so great. And it's so much works like that. Once I'm open to the idea. So one of my grandchildren was born with severe disabilities. And
Hmm.
everybody said to me, now you're going to write a book about disabilities. And I said, I don't know how to do it. I'm not an expert in disabilities. So once my eyes are open, that on Sabbath, I read an article about this amazing lady, Yael Zellinger, giving workshops for children in schools about how to interact more effectively. I said to her, I would love to make these workshops into a picture book. Can I do that? She was thrilled. And that's it. My eyes were open and there was the information and that's how it happened.
I
So,
mean, I think that's so good. I think there's so many people that worry too much about the process for writing. I think they overanalyze things. I mean, I have been through periods of that, and I've recently been like, it's just going to come. I think trust in your minds, trust in whatever entities, beings, deities, if you have them, but definitely trust in that process because you figure it out. It's one of those things that I haven't talked to any writer that hasn't had that moment where like, oh yeah, I figured it out. Now I know what my process looks like. And I mean, it seems like you have figured that out. But from the art perspective, do you do the art yourself for your
No,
books?
and I'm an arty kind of person, but I haven't written a book that I felt I would be the best illustrator for it, you
Okay,
know? So the publishers have hired the illustrators,
awesome.
and once in a while I get to recommend somebody to them, which I do. People send me their websites, and we're always looking for new artists, new illustrators, but in general the publishers have been picking the illustrators for my books. Yeah.
And that's
So
awesome. So you have multiple publishers, it sounds like.
yes, I've been
Wonderful.
working with multiple publishers, and now the last two books, my children said, "Stop sending your books to the traditional publishers. We want to become your publishers now." So my youngest children, have now started publishing my books. That's a whole new thing that just started to happen. Yeah.
That's awesome. So you've got some self-published stuff
I guess
as
that's
well.
what it's called. I'm not exactly doing it, but they are. But
Sure.
yeah, it's really exciting. And I want to tell people that I tell people that it takes 20 years and 20 minutes to write a picture book. It usually I meet so many people that say, I have an idea for writing a picture book. So I tell them, you carry it around for 20 years, just spend 20 minutes writing down a draft of your story.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it takes to write a picture book. And then you could work on it. You could spend more hours perfecting it. Just get it on paper and you'll be on your way.
Well, and I think that's actually true of novels too. I think there's a lot of people that say, I would like to write a novel of X number, whatever number of words, but I don't know how to start. And my answer is always just start. I mean,
Yes.
that's if you think about starting too often, then you won't actually, because you'd be too afraid that you won't quote unquote get it right. But the thing is, you're not going to get it right on the first draft. First
Yes.
draft is the get it out so that you can then spend the time getting it right.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
definitely learned that. I didn't start writing until I was 28. Um, and I always wanted to. I've always had that
Wow.
in the back of the mind. I've been reading. I've always loved reading books. I've been an avid reader. And then, someone mentioned to me, well, just write something. It seemed like a novel idea. I was like, well, I guess I've never actually tried to write anything. And so I did. I just tried to write something, and now it's been 5 years, and I haven't stopped. So
Oh,
I just,
beautiful.
I just keep writing because I love it. It's just part of my life now.
And do
So
you consider it play? Because to me,
yes,
I'm playing. Now,
yes,
part of it is serious, but even the serious part is play, like doing a
yeah.
crossword puzzle. Like someone is serious when they're doing a crossword puzzle, but it's still playful. Yes.
Absolutely, I totally agree. And so that's why you have to be like in the right mindset for it. Because if you're not in the play mindset, if you're too serious
Yes.
or too worried about something, then it's hard to let go and get into the
Yes.
process. I found that the best thing to prepare me for the writing process is to get loose and relaxed and be prepared, like you said, to play, just to have fun, just to enjoy the process.
Yes, exactly.
And then
And
it usually comes.
yes, and I also want to recommend, don't be afraid of rejections. I've gotten so many rejections. Yeah, all these books were published, but I could wallpaper, the place with all the rejections. So that's the way it goes. But finding a niche is very helpful.
Hmm.
That just sending it out there is, not such a great thing to do, but finding particular publishers that are interested in what you're presenting is very worthwhile.
So, and this is a very important message because I'm self-published. I'm not traditionally published,
Ah,
and that's by choice.
yeah,
Um, just a little bit explanation for you because I know we've just met. I queried like 3 agents with my books, and
right.
before I'd even gotten answers back, I decided I don't like writing query letters. I just
Okay,
I don't like it. I don't want to do this. I wasn't necessarily
right,
afraid of the rejection. I just didn't want to
right.
do it. And
Right.
so, partially creative control, I wanted to be able to control my content however I wanted to and own it myself. And two, I didn't want to waste time. In my opinion, I don't think querying is wasting time, but in my life, it felt like a
Right.
waste of time. And so
Right.
I went straight to publishing.
Right.
And so, that's my
Wonderful.
choice. But for you, I want to talk a little bit about the querying process because I'm not familiar with it. I'm very removed from it because I've never really done it. So, what does querying a children's book look like? Because I imagine the process looks different from like a novel.
I don't know if it's that different.
Is it not?
I I also felt like I wasted a lot of time with it too,
Uh-huh.
until I found the right publishers to go to.
Sure.
Until you found your niche, it was a big, I wasted tons of time on that. So I agree with you. And I wouldn't just send out, find like local publishers or
Okay.
find a publisher with your interest. If you're into environmentalism, go for that. If you went to a university, go for your university press. Go to where there'll be some connection to who you are and what you're writing, because just sending it out there, it's just really like a needle in a haystack kind of thing. I don't think it's that helpful. So I don't recommend that either, to
Well,
do that. Yeah.
that's very important. I'm glad you mentioned that because I think there's a lot of people out there that might feel the inclination to do that. Google children's books publishers and just start working down the list. But
Yes.
that
I
might not
did that. I did it. I did it.
yeah,
Believe me.
might not be worth the time. So, if you don't mind me asking, so when was your first book published, roughly?
I'll
If you can
just tell
remember.
you this. My children were little,
Your
and
children were little.
now
Okay.
and now I have, almost grown-up grandchildren. So
Sure.
you can get the picture,
So a
right?
little while. So I mean, the reason I ask is I imagine at the time of publishing your first book, there wasn't a lot of online didn't exist, right?
No
That wasn't
way.
a thing. I mean, I'm
No.
old enough that I remember the internet really becoming
No.
popular. So
No such thing like that. There was a huge IBM computer in certain offices. There was no personal computers in my no, no, nothing of that was happening.
so how did you do
Yes.
research for publishers? I mean, what did that look like?
Oh, oh, for publishers, there were like these magazines, and things like that. You'd go to a library, you'd look up. Um, they had these reference books with where to send your things to. That was it. It
Wow.
was stuff like that, and it took forever, and you'd have to mail it out. There was no emailing. Could you imagine?
Yeah, that's
Before
crazy.
dinosaurs, around the same time of dinosaurs, this was, yeah. So that's what was happening.
Well, I am just impressed because, I've talked to a lot of people who have been publishing for a long time. And I'm always impressed because the dedication to publishing was like a whole different thing.
Yes.
Not even that long ago. I mean, it's the life has changed so much in such a short
Yes.
amount of time. But I talked to people that telephone calls were their only method of,
Oh
quick
yeah.
communication. And even before that, like you said, snail mail was the best way to
Yeah.
send things, and you just twiddling your thumbs waiting to get a letter back about it. It's amazing. That's why I commend you
Oh
on
man,
your
it's
dedication.
yes. Life was very different. When I lived in Israel, we didn't even have a phone. Like we'd make a call, every few months. It was such a different life. Oh my
That's
gosh.
I mean, so there's definitely positives and negatives to both, right? I think there's
Yes.
definitely something to be said about the simplicity of the web, but there's also something to be said about the complexity of the web and how distracting and frustrating it can be. So, but that's not what this is about. We're talking about publishing. So, so nowadays, now that you know about searching for a niche, for you, when you started targeting that specific niche, do you find that like searching in the web allowed you to find those publishers relatively easily, or were you searching for books that were on specific topics and then looking up the publisher of those books when you're looking for them?
Oh, well, once I found my niche, I didn't really have to keep searching.
Okay, sure.
I had my niche, and then, I knew the publishers in this small niche. There were like maybe 8 of them, so it wasn't like a whole big thing anymore. So it got much easier.
So
Yes.
that's amazing. So, I mean, maybe this hasn't happened to you, but I'm curious to know if your niche is very small. Have you ever reached a point where one of your books gets rejected by all, and you have to, rework it or try
Yeah.
something else? Has that happened to you?
that has definitely happened. And what I do usually, I try magazines then too. I
Okay.
first published in a magazine. One story was rejected, and then I published it in a magazine. I came back a few years later. The same publisher accepted the story that they had rejected years before. I don't even know if they remembered, but it was really
That's
funny.
funny.
I don't know. But I just keep going. My philosophy usually is whenever I get a rejection, send something out that same day. Keep the momentum going.
Hmm.
Don't get into a rejected state of mind. Just keep going.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's an important thing because there's a lot of discouraging pieces of being an author. Not even just the querying piece, but also the editing can be
Ah,
discouraging, mistakes can be discouraging, bad business relationships, not even at the fault of the author. Just, I've heard of people working with illustrators and the illustrator for some reason falls through. And, they're frustrated because they were working on these illustrations and then something falls through and it's frustrating. So just
yes,
keep going.
yes. And I want to tell this is the most important thing I think of all. When you publish your book, that is just the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
People think that's the end. Oh my goodness.
I wish.
That
No.
you exactly. But here's the thing, you can do 10 million things to let people know about your book.
Mm-hmm.
And you could go cuckoo trying to do that. And you could get burned out really quickly. So I recommend just do what you enjoy.
Mm.
And I never get burnt out. I love talking about my books. I love being on podcasts. There's certain things I love giving presentations. This is a blast for me. Now, what do I hate doing? I hate being at a table selling my books. That is so
Oh.
not me. I'm not doing things like that. You have to know what you enjoy and just go for it. Then you're never working. You're just always having a blast. So eh, just have a one and don't look at it as selling your books. It's not that. What you're doing is revealing to the world. You're sharing what you're sharing the treasures that you've created. That's really what you're doing. So have a wonderful time doing that. That's what I recommend. That's the beginning that starts once your book is published.
And I love that perspective because I agree. I think so. I didn't go into publishing expecting, hit publish and I'd sell tons of books. I don't know why. I think I'd listened to enough podcasts to know that wasn't the case. But I've talked to plenty of authors who do hope that that's the case, and they're somewhat disappointed when they realize you'll be marketing for the rest of your life, and that's just the way it is, and it's not at fault of your book. It has nothing to do with how good the content is of your book. It's just that
Right.
there's so much noise and there's
Yes.
so many people and
Yes.
they just don't see it. I think
Yes.
gone are the days where a lot of people are typing in specific search terms that will match your book. I think that maybe things used to be a little bit that way, but now most people are just kind of accepting what they're seeing, and whatever jives, connects with them, whatever makes sense to them, catches their interest, they're more likely to pick up. So, yeah, and I like that you said do what you like, because I admit I
Yes.
have done things that I don't like for too long and thought,
Yes.
why am I doing this? This is not fun, particularly
Yes.
social media in some respects. I'm not
Yes.
I'm not a social media person.
Right. Everybody's different. I'm not an extrovert. You might think I am, but really I like one-on-one.
Mhm.
I'm an introvert that loves one-on-one. That's why I can't be out at some store selling my books. Oh my gosh, that's for
Mhm.
an extrovert. So you have to know yourself where, you know, being out like that is not for me. Doing a show, a presentation, that's okay for an introvert. Because again, it's like I'm just talking to one person in the audience, no problem. But like, at a marketplace is not the place for an introvert.
No, I'm
Yeah.
introverted too. So that all makes sense to me. I'm very much the same.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
understand that. But and that's the thing. I think a lot of people are too afraid to let things go. Maybe they feel like, oh, this system works for this person, or this process works for this person, but it doesn't mean it's going to work for you, and that's okay. It doesn't have
Yes.
to work for you. Do what makes sense, what's fun for you. And then I think with a lot of dedication and just consistency and diligence, I think most people are able to find the success they're looking for.
Yes. And
So,
also, I'm not doing it for money.
right.
My motivation is to get my messages out into the world.
Hmm.
So, so that determination does not end for me. That is with me all the time. So
Yeah.
I'm real dedicated to this. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's amazing. I also don't do it for the money. I do it because it's
Right.
fun, because I
Yeah.
love the experience.
Yeah.
And with my specific story, um I remember growing up reading lots of amazing books. And I'll just say that content nowadays in novels is quite different than it used to be. So there are a lot of things that aren't, I would say, as a parent, appropriate for children, or teenagers. I would not prefer if my children read certain things. And it's just hard. I feel like there's a lot more of those things in
Right.
books that's a little bit more adult in nature,
Right.
which to each his own. But I want to have safe books, so to speak, for my
Yes.
kids and provide more of that content. And you'd be surprised how many people see or hear that I've written epic fantasy books, long form fantasy books that are clean, that's
Yes.
safe for teenagers, because they're like, oh,
Yes.
like normally it's like Game of Thrones type situation where it's like, whoa, there's just a lot of violence, there's a lot of other
Yes.
adult content, and they're like, great books, great stories, not great content for kids. And so
Wonderful. So wonderful. So
that's
important what you're doing. It's so great. And I hope that you can write. I don't know if it interests you, but if you could write about your experiences raising six children, you're a homesteader. I
yes,
read that. I mean,
correct.
I think this is fascinating to people. If you could, I don't know if you include the experiences with your own children and homesteading in your writing, but wow, I think people are more and more fascinated by this.
Yes, I definitely need to include. I haven't written anything that's not like, most of the stuff is very fantasy,
I say,
dystopian fantasy type of, not in this
aha,
world, different world situations. I've thought about writing a memoir, haven't done it yet. Um, I've thought about writing like a nonfiction book about being an author. Like I said, I'm a
yeah,
father of six. I have a full-time job as well. So I
amazing,
work full time. We have goats and chickens. Um,
amazing. I
I'm
love it.
got all sorts of church responsibilities as well. So I've got lots going on, but I'm still making the authoring thing work for me. And I think there's a lot of people that hopefully would hear that and be like, wow, I'm busy, but I think I can do this. I can do it.
Beautiful.
So that's part of
Yes,
the reason this podcast. I started this podcast to help people find that hope, find that joy in the process, and not be too
yes,
discouraged when, child's crying and they need you to go put a band-aid on their knee. It's okay.
yeah,
It's not a big
yes.
deal. You can just pick up where you were after everything's settled and keep working on it. So,
Exactly. Follow
okay,
what your heart loves to do. It is such a wonderful life that way. Yes.
absolutely. So I want to ask you, since you're very clearly a prolific children's author. I want to talk about your memoir briefly, just a minute. But what's your advice to someone who wants to look into children's? Do you recommend that they find that niche first, or do you recommend that they just get the story, the passion out, and then niche it later?
Yeah.
What do you recommend on that
Oh,
front?
first get it on paper for
Okay, so
sure.
that's the first step.
Because if nobody else, you could share it with your own family, with other
True.
people. Go bring it out of you. Why should it just be in that closet of you and nobody else gets to see it? So definitely get it out. And then I definitely recommend see what niche does your story fit into to save yourself a lot of time just sending it out. I mean, for sure, you could send it to the three biggest. Well, you can't send it to the biggest publishers directly. You need an agent, or you could send it to some popular agents. You could, waste a little time doing it. It's just not that productive. But
Yeah.
if you feel like doing it, go for it. But but the main thing is it is very helpful to find your own special connections. What connections do you have with and your story has to specific publishers?
Well, I'm just gonna piggyback off of what you said earlier about you're not selling books, you are selling these ideas, this passion, these learnings,
Yes.
whatever it is. I also heard someone say you're not selling books, you're creating a community of thought, of your worlds that you've created,
Yes.
of these ideas that you put together. And so, yeah, you're making connections with people, and it's so much easier to be willing and interested in buying a book when you know the author as a person.
Yes.
You find out about their life and you're like, oh, you're
Yes.
really cool. And you wrote a
Yes.
book. Cool. I want to look at
Yes.
your book.
Yes. So true.
So it's cool to look at it from that perspective. So from the memoir, I don't want to leave the memoir out because it's very important. So what's the story behind the memoir? What made you want to write that?
Well, I mean, I have such an interesting story of, you know, graduating with honors from Harvard, going on to medical school, leaving medical school to become a homemaker, raise my 6 children, and devote myself really to helping to raise amazing people. And while I was home, I was writing and stuff like that. And also, I became religious, which I wasn't brought up that way.
Okay.
And it's the story of my desperate search for meaning in life,
Wow.
and how that all. But it's what's so interesting about it is that I actually had saved my old diaries and journals and letters, so you can see the whole process. It's like a documentary on paper, and
Oh, cool.
it's kind of amazing that way. Yeah, it's like a psychological mystery because it gets solved at the end. Yeah.
I love that. I think that's really cool. I think I'd be currently would be a little too afraid to write a memoir. Maybe someday. I don't know. I think I've got a really interesting story to write as well.
Yes.
But I do
You
think that
you
it will
seem
get
to.
more interesting. I'm still young-ish, and I anticipate that things will continue to evolve, let's say that. So,
Yes. Well, my memoir is from ages 12 to 32. It's that 20
okay.
years of major changes happening.
Oh, well, I
Yes.
am I am that old, so I guess I could.
Yeah.
I could write that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's cool though that you thought, well, this is an important story close to my heart, and I think there's something to be learned from other people, maybe who are in similar experiences, or possibly even someone who just loves reading memoirs. I
Yes.
think it's a really cool genre, particularly even if it's of someone who is nothing like you, right? Just to
Yes.
hear the human journey of a specific person about with real stories and real thoughts.
Yes.
It's very cathartic, I think, to some people who maybe feel alone, or maybe they lack understanding of their own life. So
Exactly.
I commend you.
Searching for meaning in
Mhm,
life. That's what it's for. Other people what is this all for? Because that's what I was all about. What
mhm.
are we living for? And just the answers that I found and how it brought joy to my life. Yeah.
I love that. That's amazing. And so did that go through one of the same publishers of your children's book, or you
No, no. And
had to
I
find it?
searched for years for that
Okay.
publisher until I found a Christian woman, and she very devoted to Christianity. And here's this book about a person becoming a religious Jew, and she was so into it. And she finally found the publisher for the book. So, but now what happened is actually that publishing company has just closed down.
Oh,
So my youngest children are taking over the publication of that as well. Yeah.
so I love self-publishing. So that's amazing. I love it. I think that's great. Well, I appreciate your time. This has been amazing. I definitely have learned a lot. I have thought about writing a kid's book more recently due to events on social media. So I'm considering it, but hearing your thoughts has been, I think I might take a leap and give it a go.
Yes.
We'll
Yes.
see.
20 minutes. Just
We'll
spend
see.
20 minutes.
Well, I don't know if I can do it in 20 minutes. Ironically, in about 20 minutes, I can write about 1,500 words of a novel.
Wow.
I'm not
Wow.
sure I can write such a short. We'll try. I'll try it. 20 minutes and
Go
we'll
for
give it a
it.
go.
Play. Just play.
Just play, just have fun. Well, this has been great. Before we go, where can people find more information about you and your books if they want to take a
Yeah,
look?
the amazing website that my children created, the getzbookshop.com. Yeah,
Awesome.
Getz is spelled funny. You see how it's spelled.
So we'll
G
put
O E T C.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a Goetz. I'll put it in the link, a link in the notes too. So anybody listening, wherever they are, they'll be able to pick it up in the notes and go there. So thank you so much. This has been amazing.
Thank you so much. Can't wait to read your children's book.
Yeah, I can't wait to read it too. I hope you found that helpful. I've actually thought about writing a children's book. Have I done anything on that? Kind of. So I actually put together a story around Emma. And then, I won't reveal any titles or anything because I haven't quite decided yet. But the Emma the cat, the sensation on TikTok, I was planning on taking some images of the real life Emma and either converting it to watercolor or maybe using the real images as is and writing a children's book. So we'll see how that goes. If I even do it, I'm still kind of on the fence about it. But I did write out a story that my wife says is actually pretty good. So will I do it? It just kind of depends. I need to sort out some of the art situations. Now I've got a bunch of images of her, but what to do with them is another question. So we'll see. But hearing Bracha's experience has been amazing. It definitely encouraged me to try to figure it out. I will not be trying to traditionally publish any children's book that I do write because that's just not me. My ideas apply to children's books around traditionally publishing. I'm just not interested in it, at least right now. So, of course, if you have any questions for me or insights, or if you'd like to join me on the podcast, definitely comment on the YouTube channel or the videos or any of the podcasts, wherever you listen to it. Definitely want to make this more of a conversation. And if you'd, like I said, if you'd like to join me, definitely fill out the form at dankinner.com/podcast, or you can email me or message me. I'm happy to talk to you there as well. So thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to talking to you next week.